More discussions on the early Mormon church historical deceptions about polygamy and other things next on Polygamy. What love is this? Several months ago, we started a list of deceptions. It's been kind of an ongoing hopping off series. And about the deceptions and prevarications of the early Mormon church, a list that we found on mormonthink.com, and the link is on the screen for any of our viewers who wants to go there and take a look at it. The list started out as 101 deceptions, and it's grown 152 now, and I started doing this one. And that's really not a very good track record for a religion that claims to have the truth and be God's true church and bringing God's truth to us. Now, God is not a God who tells lies. He doesn't deceive or change his mind, nor does he need humans to lie to protect him or his church. And we don't discuss every deception that's on the list, but we choose the ones dealing with the topic of polygamy or a Mormon doctrine that the polygamy groups embrace, along with Mormonism. Right. Now, we ended last time in September. Actually, it's been quite a while since we went on with this topic, but we left off on deception number 100, so we'll briefly review that deception for context, and then on to number 101. Now, the context is of these next few deceptions is the Mormon polygamy investigation by Congress in 1902 and 1903. That was over 100 years ago, and so you might ask, well, why does that matter today? Well, because they deny their deceit even today, and they still prevaricate about their true history, and as every member of a polygamy community knows, they still tell lies about their behavior. Now, number 99 and 100 deals with B.H. Roberts admitting he had plural wives, while Wilford Woodruff denied that there were still polygamy in the church. Mm-hmm. So there's a big deception. Yep. So we begin with deception 101, dealing with the Mormon church's reputation for dishonesty.
Number 101. Reed Smoot was elected to the United States Senate in 1902, and federal lawmakers protested immediately. He was sworn into office in March 1903, but government authorities feared that Smoot was a polygamous sympathizer, though not a polygamist himself. It was also a well-established fact that the church had engaged in deception for decades to evade the law. Because of the church's reputation for dishonesty, the Smoot investigation lasted more than 3 years from 2004 to 1907 and resulted in over 3,000 pages of sworn testimony.
Wow. And all that is documented. So there's the evidence is there for anyone to find. The United States has said that investigation included Mormon history, theology, and culture. They wanted the truth and were determined to find it. They knew the Mormon church had lied and deceived the American people, and those who did not know or doubted the honesty of the Mormon church leaders before the Smoot hearings had no doubt of it afterwards. Wow. There were mountains of testimony and documented evidence. We have another quote.
More from mormonthink.com. The Mormons were guilty of an unending prevarication. Mormon histories and curriculum have never admitted to leaders' past duplicity, though it would be the honorable thing to do. Failure to admit to past duplicity continues to serve as a source of embarrassment to many members of the LDS Church interested in studying church history.
And that's really a good point. Just come clean. Repent of it as Jesus commanded, but will they ever admit that they were wrong in anything or that they gave false witness, and they continue to do so. Now, Joseph F. Smith was Mormon president and had been called as their first witness. Now, he's under oath, of course, so we quote prevarication number 102.
President Joseph F. Smith was the first witness called and placed under oath to tell the whole truth before the Smoot investigation. His testimony may have been the most damaging. He pled incredible ignorance. That sounded like President Hinckley.
Yeah,
he pled incredible ignorance concerning the polygamist activities that he personally permitted and encouraged. Yet he admitted to fathering children by 5 wives since 1890, after the manifesto had been issued.
Okay. Now, this is a good example of the leader, the one they call a prophet, the one that they call is God's mouthpiece to the people, the one they say can never lead the people astray. He lied. He lied to Congress. He lied under oath. Did he think God needed protection, or was he protecting himself? And he wasn't. He wasn't a polygamist, and he gave false testimony under oath. Here's another lie by Joseph F. Smith.
Number 103. President Smith categorically denied that Presidents Woodruff and Snow had authorized polygamous marriages after the manifesto in 1890. He knew that to be false. He went on to say that he had not heard anyone advocate, encourage, or recommend plural marriages since the manifesto. This was also false.
And it sure was, my goodness. Now, the list of deceptions frequently quotes from a wonderful historical book about early Mormon polygamy entitled Solemn Covenant. And we do recommend getting this book if you're interested in honest, documented Mormon church history, especially after the manifesto.
Yeah.
Many people were shocked that Smith, the president of the church, would so blatantly lie under oath, denying what he knew was the truth. One person suggested that he was using his words differently than the way most people use them.
Yeah.
It's an understatement.
Lying to the Lord.
And it's true that from the very beginning they tried to hide polygamy, and they did use code words and phrases to identify polygamy, code words that only the polygamous people would recognize. Celestial marriage was one of those phrases. It was coined to refer specifically to plural marriage. The public's perception of Mormonism suffered because of their deceptions. We quote.
This is from Solemn Covenant, page 253. The constant stream of duplicity and lies increased the public's hostility toward Mormons. Most were disgusted with the Mormon prophet, seer, and revelator, who refused to come forth with a degree of honesty while under oath before the Senate hearings.
And there you go, God's people, claiming to be God's people. This is a huge problem. Why would a holy, sanctified mouthpiece of God be such a coward, afraid of telling the truth about what he believes God told him to do? If God was truly the author of polygamy, why didn't the men just come forward during those hearings and admit it?
Yeah.
They wouldn't tell the truth for the Lord, but they had no problem in conscience to lie for the Lord. They just proved to be false witnesses. Well, what does the Bible say about being a false witness? We have a few passages.
Proverbs 12:17. Whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence, but a false witness utters deceit.
And the next verse reveals the witness of God's own personal character.
Isaiah 45:19. I, the Lord, speak the truth. I declare what is right.
Now, the Mormons, polygamists, lied. They did not give honest evidence. How could they belong to the Lord when they refused to be honest? They say they want to be like him, but they haven't acted like him.
No.
The next false witness at these Senate hearings is deceit number 105.
George Reynolds antagonized hearing participants when he lied about knowing that his own daughter had married Benjamin Clough, president of the Brigham Young Academy, as a plural wife. He made the fantastic claim that since the manifesto was issued 13 years prior, he had never spoken to anyone either for or against the practice. Reynolds had to be persuaded by Smoot to refrain from testifying that though his daughter was married, he knew nothing about it.
That is unbelievable. That is totally unbelievable. He would know his daughter was married, wouldn't he? And wouldn't he know that she was a plural wife? I mean, they're living in Mormon territory where polygamy raged. Wouldn't he know that 13 years prior, the president then had issued the manifesto declaring polygamy was no longer to be practiced? He would know all these things. And they didn't fool the Senate investigators either. Years after the manifesto, the polygamous Mormons continued polygamy in secret. They lied to the United States government. They deceived the citizens of the country they called their home and imagined they were doing God's will. Well, God's will never condones false witness and deception. We have another quote.
From Jeremiah 9:3. They bend their tongue like a bow. Falsehood and not truth has grown strong in the land. For they proceed from evil to evil, and they do not know me, declares the Lord.
Well, that could be said of the Utah territory, the land that they describes the culture that developed after Mormonism came to this territory. Truth was replaced by falsehood, and the final determination by God is, well, they don't know me. They claim to know him, but deceivers cannot lay honest claim to knowing God when they do something he has forbidden.
That's true.
Another very important Mormon who lied under oath was Apostle Hyrum M. Smith.
Yes, number 106. Under oath at the Smoot hearings, Apostle Hyrum M. Smith, son of President Joseph F. Smith, testified that he had no recollection of the subject of polygamy being discussed in any of the meetings of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Oh boy. Then he contradicted himself by assuring the committee that if the subject was discussed, the 12 were urged to stamp out the practice. Both statements were lies.
Now, I wonder when the Quorum of the 12 met if they kept minutes.
Yeah.
Or if they kept 2 sets of minutes.
Probably got accidentally burned or something.
Or something lost or something. Yeah.
I'm sure it was discussed.
Oh, good heavens, yes.
Yeah.
Their whole religion was based on polygamy.
Yeah.
It had to have been discussed. And many of them were polygamists themselves.
Well, and the manifesto itself had to have generated some discussion.
Exactly, yeah. So, but his father had lied under oath, and now so does he. Polygamy was a treasured doctrine in those days, and it remains a treasured doctrine and practice in today's polygamy groups. Now, we ask, how can polygamy be such a stronghold? We know from reading the Bible that polygamy is not the will of God. We know he never commanded it. We know monogamy is his choice for marriage, but polygamy has inserted its deadly tentacles and almost like a drug, it won't let go. They refuse to even consider polygamy is not commanded by God, even though there's no evidence that he did. It's what God said that matters, not what Joseph Smith said, or not what Joseph Smith said God said. Now, deception number 107 and 108 present additional leaders, Francis M. Lyman and Apostle John Henry Smith, lying under oath about polygamy. Number 109.
109. Apostle Mariner W. Merrill swore that he had taken no plural wives since the manifesto, though it was widely known that he had taken one in 1901, which was 11 years after the manifesto. And
so again, the records show, they kept good records of their polygamous marriages.
Yeah.
And so the records show that he lied under oath. Actually, the book Solemn Covenant has a list of all the Mormon men who took plural wives after the manifesto and names the leaders who performed the marriage ceremonies. So there's double deception going on there.
True.
And deception number 110, Smoot himself is caught in false testimony.
Senator-to-be Reed Smoot testified that he had no knowledge that any apostle or any member of the presidency had taken a plural wife since 1890, except for the cases he learned of at the hearings. This was demonstrably false, as later testimony by Smoot proved what he contradicted himself.
You know, Mark Twain said, if you always tell the truth, you'll never have to wonder what you said or try to remember what you said. And they did contradict themselves a lot. They still do, actually. And eventually, of course, their lies are exposed. In fact, God warned us. that very thing would happen. We read Numbers chapter 32.
In Numbers, verse 23, "Behold, you have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out."
Okay, and so it did.
Yeah.
The history that we have on their deceptions, we are able to look at and see what they did and how they lied. And we have volumes of books and publishing the lies and deceptions and prevarications and testimonies, journals, diaries, and affidavits and court records. All have revealed their deceit. The sins of bearing false witnesses found them out. Mormonism, to this day, teaches that God requires members to keep the commandments. And one of those 10 commandments is thou shalt not bear false witness.
That's right.
In other words, don't lie about anything. Yet they claim they're God's only true church. But God said in 1 John 2, verse 4, "Whoever says, 'I know him,' but does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him." Mm-hmm. Lying to protect polygamy or to protect your church organization is not acceptable. God can protect himself. He can protect his people and his church. He doesn't need us to lie for him. Mm-hmm. And why would we lie anyway about something if he truly commanded
That's
it?
True. Yeah, and like you said, if they're actually acting in the name of God, they should stand up and be counted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's number 111. Under oath at the Smoot hearings, President Joseph F. Smith testified that church inquiries into polygamous marriages or the arrangement of plural marriages by church leaders in Salt Lake was an issue delegated to the local units to investigate. He did this despite being one of those, along with other church leaders, who orchestrated the marriages. See?
Oh, I know. According to Solemn Covenant, evidence shows that the Mormon church leaders were well aware of and actually did plan and perform plural marriages after the manifesto, and of course they denied the deception. One thing that many people probably don't realize is that there could be no marriages without the leaders' first approval. He had to say it was okay to get married before they could ever have the marriage anyway, not to mention perform the ceremony.
And were these done in the temple or at that point
in the Mormon history, they could have no marriages,
without
especially polygamy marriage, without the leader's consent.
Yeah.
They had to go to the leader and get his approval.
Well, that, and were they being performed in the temple? Do you know these these polygamous marriages? Do you think?
Well, I don't think so. Not at this time. They went to Mexico and Canada and some of these other places to get their to be married.
But certainly the leaders would be aware of everything going on.
They had to give approval of the marriages to begin with.
Yeah.
And yet they deny knowing anything about them. And now, of course, we have another verse from the Bible book of Proverbs to share with you about dishonesty.
Yeah, chapter 12, verse 22, "Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight."
So I guess we get to choose whether we want to be an abomination to God or a delight to him.
Fair enough.
Based on this and other passages that we've also shared, how can people believe God is okay with those who tell lies? In John 8:44, Jesus tells us that the devil is the father of lies. We hope that these scriptures help put into perspective the true nature of the early Mormon church, their deceitful behavior, and the spiritual origin of Mormon polygamy. The devil is the father of lies.
Oof. Yeah.
Deception number 113.
Church leaders attempted to persuade Anthony W. Ivins to sign an affidavit that they knew to be categorically untrue. Being a rare LDS man of conscience, Ivins refused to sign it. The purpose of the document was to certify that no plural marriages occurred in Mexico after the manifesto. Most members are unaware that church leaders pressured others to lie.
So not only they lie and they bring others, and they say the church leaders will never lead you astray.
Whoops.
Whoops is true. The fact that church leaders not only themselves lied under oath, they tempted and pressured other people to bear false witness. Now, most people have heard of the 7 deadly sins. We have God's list of these 7 sins. Pay attention to them.
Yeah, from Proverbs 6:16 through 19. "There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers.
Notice what he says about a lying tongue and a false witness.
Yeah.
One of the 7 top things that God hates.
Yeah.
And the Mormons did it. It's the foundation of the early church history. There's no amount of Mormon justification that will change God's character to the point that he will accept liars and false testimonies. And their deceit didn't stop at the Smoot hearings. They continued to present themselves as being honest and law-abiding citizens when both Congress and the citizens of the country were well aware of the false testimonies and denials of polygamy. In fact, at that time, public perception of the Mormons and their leaders was that they were not honest. We quote Deceit number 114.
Smoot wanted the leaders to take steps to repair the damages that they had caused. Consequently, President Smith read a statement that compounded the problem of negative perception. The statement denied that plural marriages had been performed in the church after the 1890 Manifesto, and denied that new plural marriages were being performed. Both statements were false. In fact, he had sanctioned many marriages since the Manifesto. He also stated that those who had had marriages solemnized since the Manifesto were subject to excommunication from the church. This was also a lie. Finally, Smith blasted the committee for accusing church leaders of being dishonest. So he blasted them.
Yeah, it's kind of strange to read all of this. And yet, growing up in polygamy, we were taught how to lie. We were sat together and had family meetings telling us how to tell a lie.
Tell you
what lies
what
to tell.
not to say to anybody.
And what to say.
Yeah, what to say.
Right. Evidence clearly shows that the president of the Mormon Church at that time, who was Joseph F. Smith, had no qualms in lying and getting other people to lie, and then he lied about his lies to the United States Congress. This is reminiscent of Jesus' accusations to the religious leaders of his day and how he called them to account, as recorded in Matthew chapter 23. He called them hypocrites, children of hell, blind guides, blind fools, whitewashed tombs, serpents, and a brood of vipers. Why did Jesus go to such lengths to say these things to religious leaders? Because they pretended to be righteous and claimed to be God's special people, but they weren't. They didn't practice what they preached. They were leading the people astray. And that's precisely what the Mormon and polygamy group leadership has done since Mormonism first began. They claim God said things he didn't say, that he required polygamy and the united order. Lying for the Lord and blood atonement were also practices of the early Mormon polygamists. In this list of prevarications by Mormon leaders, we read this comment.
Current LDS apologists are reluctant to admit dishonesty on the part of their leaders, and they find creative ways to characterize their behavior as noble and praiseworthy, as if they had no choice. Prophets who claim to commune with God and direct the only true church on earth are placed on pedestals as models of virtue. Current church members assume that LDS leaders are and were men of principle.
And the same is true with the polygamy group leaders.
Sure
they are looked up to as men on a pedestal. The responsibility of members of polygamy groups and the Mormon Church are supposed to prove everything that they're told, everything they learn. Get the evidence and go outside of the box to do it, by the way. And the evidence is there. In fact, when you find the truth, you'll also discover that it's been staring you in the face all the time. It's there. All you have to do is want it. And the truth, by the way, is more important than anything else in your life or on this planet. Now, we're going to summarize Numbers 117 through 120, and basically it was about the weariness of the church's lies, the deceptions and the cover-ups, as the church scurried into damage control because their reputation was hurt. They offered as sacrificial lambs polygamous apostles John Taylor and Matthias Cowley, who would receive fake disciplinary actions to separate them from the quorum of the 12, but not to worry, they were told. They were promised that President Smith would reinstate them.
Oh boy.
After all of this facade was taken care of. But President Smith did not keep his word, and they were never reinstated.
Oh.
They wanted to convince lawmakers that their punishment was real and that they were both cut off from the church in 1911. We quote from lie number 119.
Lies and deception about polygamy divided the members into at least two camps. One, maintain the practice despite government penalties, or two, rid the church of the practice.
Well, it's been over 100 years, and we know today that they decided what they decided to do, except they didn't totally rid the church of the practice, because in their temples, they still practice polygamy, sealings of living people to dead people.
Yeah.
And President Smith continued to prevaricate and practice lies, deceit regarding Mormonism and polygamy, and he continued to refuse to admit his role in keeping and practicing and keeping plural marriage alive. All of this happened years after 1890, which is the date the LDS Church today has instructed media to claim they gave up polygamy. Now, that just plain is not true. So they continue to lie about their history even up to this day. And all of this is to hide their practice of something that God never commanded or condoned. We quote Mormon apostle Matthias Cowley about lying.
I am not dishonest and not a liar, and have always been true to the work and to the brethren. Cowley later admitted, we have always been taught that when the brethren were in a tight place, that it would not be amiss to lie to help them out.
So he's not a liar, but he will lie to protect
Lying
the
for
people.
the Lord isn't really lying, I guess.
I
huh?
guess not. A whole new definition of what it is to bear false witness. Thank you, Earl. This is
That's
very
so
disturbing
fascinating.
sometimes, isn't it?
I'm proud of the Congress for pulling these people in and doing the interviews and
doing
trying to.
What
I guess it had been reported that polygamy was still going on, and
well, they were upset when Smoot was voted into the Senate when he himself wasn't a polygamist,
and
but
they
he
promised to cut the polygamy, and that's what really allowed Utah to become a state in 1896.
They deceived them to become a state.
Right.
Yeah, and that's
they
pretty
kept-
serious.
And kept doing it. So yeah, they were not happy about that.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah, right. I agree. Now, we know that all humans are sinners. We know that. But we also know that God forgives those who confess to Him and repent, which includes turning away from our sin. We also know that the leaders of those polygamy groups and the church itself never confess or admit to their deceptions and crimes. They have not served God or the people with a humble spirit and contrite heart. Jesus came to save sinners, but a religion that is called by His name and refuses to believe what Jesus taught, they're not followers of the Savior, Jesus Christ. Jesus taught there is no marriage after this life, and that monogamy is God's original plan and only plan for marriage, but they teach otherwise, therefore denying the authority of Jesus. We urge you to read the New Testament with a heart's desire to know, believe, and follow God's truth. Thank you for watching.